Okay, Milton Friedman, if you are made dictator for one day, the next day the American government...
No, I don't want to be made dictator.
You wouldn't?
I don't believe in dictators.
Okay.
I believe we want to bring about change by the agreement of the citizens. I don't believe in arbitrary rule.
Let me put it this way then.
If we can't persuade the public that it's desirable to do these things, we have no right to impose them, even if we had the power to do it.
Proponents of the Great Reset argue that the pandemic proves our former society doesn't work. So we need a tech-focused, sustainable future to reduce emissions and thereby save the planet.
I now have the pleasure to welcome the World Economic Forum. It is the cradle of some of our prominent organizations that are here with us today. It is the place, for example, where CEPI was founded, and it is a main link to the private sector. With us is Professor Klaus Schwab on video.
The World Economic Forum is now very much engaged into this initiative of shaping a great reset for the post-corona era.
The Great Reset is a rebranded, tightened-up version of the UN decades-old Sustainable Development Agenda, also known as Agenda 21.
This year's lockdowns have caused emissions to fall dramatically, but emissions are already rising again, in some places surpassing pre-COVID levels.
The same policies and ideas are contained in the Green New Deal, which was defeated in 2019 in the US Congress.
People are dying. This is serious.
Procedural vote on the long-shot Green New Deal resolution. That measure failed.
On this vote, the yeas are 0, the nays are 57.
It bears repeating. 6 months before SARS-CoV-2 was discovered by China, the UN and the World Economic Forum signed a strategic partnership specifically to advance the Sustainable Development Agenda, now known as the Great Reset.
But under your leadership, Secretary General, we have together advanced another important milestone last year in establishing a strategic partnership framework between the United Nations and the World Economic Forum.
Klaus Schwab has been openly fighting against Milton Friedman-style economics for decades, ever since Friedman published his famous 1970 essay, "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits."
That's why this year's forum sees the launch of a new Davos manifesto, and it's a powerful opportunity to change business as usual. While the Western liberal economic order has reaped huge benefits, it's been too narrowly focused on the interests of shareholders. That's why the forum is pushing for stakeholder capitalism, a model where corporations are oriented to benefit not just shareholders, but all stakeholders: customers, suppliers, employees, local communities. And this isn't just some fantasy idea that only benefits consumers. It's got major buy-in from serious economists, the big four accounting firms, and the banking sector.
Innovation historically has been the result of a collective effort.
Schwab now predicts that the COVID-19 pandemic, which he says will last at least until 2022, will mark the final death knell of neoliberalism, which he defines as a corpus of ideas and policies favoring competition over solidarity, creative destruction over government intervention, and economic growth over social welfare. Others would describe neoliberalism as decentralized power and smaller government, and Schwab's preferred system as China under Xi Jinping. How long has Schwab known that a pandemic could be used to advance his ideals?
We are coming out, thanks also to the leadership of China in terms of fighting the pandemic, in terms of reinvigorating its economy. We have now a window of opportunity to create this global reset which we all need.
A while, if his publications and planning exercises are any indication. His book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, contains lengthy discourse on how pandemics are known agents for major societal shifts. He asks, why should COVID-19 be any different? Then there's the fact that Schwab's organization practiced a high-level pandemic exercise in October 2019, less than 5 months before COVID-19 came along.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The World Economic Forum's co-sponsors for this event were the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, both of which have actively promoted 2020's unprecedented pandemic response. As Imperial College London's Neil Ferguson recently explained, lockdowns were not recommended by any government until Xi Jinping changed what was possible by proclaiming, "This worked for us in China."
How have we managed to get in such a position that we basically have no idea how to get out of it?
I mean, I actually think you can turn that question around. I think it's quite remarkable, and China showed the way, that we have basically stopped a highly transmissible respiratory virus in its tracks.
This extraordinarily fortuitously timed pandemic planning exercise makes Schwab look like something of an oracle. Indeed, he openly brags about his foresight. For years, international organizations like the World Health Organization, institutions like the World Economic Forum, and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and individuals like Bill Gates have been warning us about the next pandemic risk, even specifying that it would emerge in a highly populated place where economic development forces people and wildlife together, that it would spread quickly and silently by exploiting networks of human travel and trade, and that it would reach multiple countries by thwarting containment. In 2017, Anthony Fauci made a similar prediction.
But also there will be a surprise outbreak, and I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
Like Schwab, Fauci actively promotes lockdowns. Like Schwab, he declares that we can never again return to normal. If we do, we should expect diseases to constantly jump from animals to humans, because pandemics never happened until 2020, when the world grew too industrialized. To save ourselves, we must redesign society in harmony with nature. Both Fauci and Schwab's prose are littered with terms like sustainability, inclusiveness, green, nature, and harmony. Terms that are hard to disagree with, although the behaviors supposedly promoting them are a harder sell. Schwab reveals in his Great Reset book that our new germ-avoidant behaviors are seen as optimal to the environment. During lockdowns, many consumers previously reluctant to rely too heavily on digital applications and services were forced to change their habits almost overnight. Many of the tech behaviors that we were forced to adopt during confinement will, through familiarity, become more natural. If health considerations become paramount, we may decide, for example, that a cycling class in front of a screen at home is safer and cheaper. The same reasoning applies to many different domains, like flying to a meeting. Zoom is safer, cheaper, greener, and much more convenient. Driving to distant family gathering for the weekend. The WhatsApp family group is not as fun, but again, safer, cheaper, and greener. Or even attending an academic course. Not as fulfilling, but cheaper and more convenient. Spelling this out for those too stunned to take it in. This is an open admission that it benefits Schwab and Fauci's political agenda to continue lockdowns as long as possible. The same people who sell interminable lockdowns by ignoring great science on pre-existing immunity, lack of asymptomatic spread, and flawed tests, believe the lockdowns are the perfect agent to usher in the changes they desire.
And the time to act is now.
Will they succeed? Is their behavior remotely justified? Does the pandemic really prove our society is fatally flawed? Why can't they use the political system to gain majority votes if their agenda is so good?
Because we're all in this together, so help us build a fairer world.
As kids, what can we do right now?
Because it is not immediately easy to become in the wealthy class. There are certain parts of the system which make that virtually impossible for the real person. Now, I believe that this freedom too represents the belief in equality as opposed to liberty. And I wonder, is it possible to build a system based on this equality, which I believe that many people agree in, and would not be willing to sacrifice to the liberty of freedom from?
Well, I'm not going to be able to give a full answer to your question because you've asked a very, very complex question, and so you're going to have to pardon me if I am a little dogmatic. But I only want to suggest that the statements I'm making are not without some thought and reason behind them. In my opinion, a society that aims for equality before liberty will end up with neither equality nor liberty. And a society that aims first for liberty will not end up with equality, but it will end up with a closer approach to equality than any other kind of system that has ever been developed. Now, that conclusion is based both on evidence from history, across history, and also, I believe, on reasoning which, if you try to follow through the implications of aiming first at equality, will become clear to you. You can only aim at equality by giving some people the right to take things from others. And what ultimately happens when you aim at equality is that A and B decide what C shall do for D. Except that they take a little bit of a commission off on the way.